Hey, hello everyone, and welcome to Inside VirtX Live, where storytelling meets real conversations, right? This is not just a show, it's a community of passionate creators who aren't just interested in storytelling, but also in developing their own products and seeing it from start to finish, right? So, welcome, and we hope you enjoy the show today. Now, I'm bringing on a special guest, but before I bring him on, just let me know where you're watching from. Put it in the chat. Let us know where you're watching from. Say hello, and so we can say hi back to you, right? Wherever you're watching from, just put it in the chat. Thank you and welcome to the show. Now, who we have here with us today is a really special guy. Like we work together on stage, right from inception. And he brought in so much expertise. He brought in so much passion. He's one of the most passionate, animators, games creators in Nigeria, and he is also really excellent at passing on knowledge. So I'm not gonna say too much, but everyone, please put your hands together. Give a warm welcome to Uchenna, aka Busaman. You might know him on YouTube. He's always, out there putting out some content. So Uchenna, please, you're welcome. You're welcome. Come online. Yes, there's the man. There's the man. How are you doing?
I'm good.
All right, all right, all right. Good to see you. Good to see you. And now we always have our, our chats over the phone, and they're really interesting conversations. But I figured we'll come online and talk a bit more about the industry, talk a bit more about what you're doing. But for those who don't know, now you do a lot of things, right? So for those who don't know you, and for those who haven't encountered you, what is it that you do actually?
Mm. So that has been a question I've been asking myself lately, and it has driven me to to kind of drill down and find out exactly what that means for me. And what that means for me is that I want to be known as studio head director for games. And that because over the years of me passing on knowledge, like almost over 8 years in teaching, from 3D animation to game engines, I have picked up a couple of skills that has made me a generalist on every sector. And over time, I've also started asking myself, what do I really do? And I think at the end of the day, I still want to look for that intersection between where I keep on passing knowledge and lead the next generation of creators to the next level, help them get to where they're supposed to get to on time, while at the same time still making products and guiding them through. So, and the best place to do that is to be known as a creative director for a game studio.
Wow. Wow. When we first met and when we first talked, and we were talking about, coming on the team for Stage Right, and a lot of the things that we wanted to achieve really aligned. We kept saying that, like, we're so aligned where, what you're trying to achieve is very similar to what we're trying to achieve. And, it was so great having you on board, seeing that vision, bringing it to pass. So what I want to know, actually, let's start from why animation and why games? What is it about animation and games that drives you?
Yeah. So it's going to start with a familiar place where most creative people started from. I started from actually, enjoying or consuming this kind of content, talking about from Super Ted to Voltron and the rest. And I also saw myself like I loved it so much. We drew them on papers, on sticker boards, on walls, everywhere. So I love them so much. I saw myself in those characters. I wanted to kind of be in those scenes, right? I wanted to be the person that makes up those stories or be part of that industry, right? At the time, I didn't know what this industry was called. I just knew it was just cartoons and we loved it so much and reading comics and everything. I just identified with that space so much. So growing up, over time, we all know it was a hobby. And then over time, it just became something I do easily. And and I realized how much it impacts me. For example, I love science. I'm a science student. I study computers. I was science throughout secondary school, and I was computer science. I'm always gravitated to science. And even though I have this art inside me, I love science subjects a lot. And most of that origin, I found them in comics and cartoons that I watched growing up. how Superman gets his powers, how gravity works, how people fly, Lex Luthor, the bad guy, how he's using science to clone people every time. So everything in those comics inspired me to want to know more about science. And sometimes when you read those comics, or those cartoons, you find out some of those things they call the names they give themselves are actually words in the real words, like in books or science or in biology. It made me want to dig in more, like, like Batman and the rest, his Batarang and smoke pellets. So it just slowly made me feel like the world was real and kind of edged me towards that space where, as an artist, I realized I could connect all the dots myself. I could be a science person and I still be an artist, which are the two things I love and that inspired me. So that's slowly kind of, uh, as a child, already I was already cornered in this space. There was no space to go to that to go to the art space and the science space. So yeah, that's what drove me to share stories. So over time, I started realizing that like I needed to share stories. It just boiled down to sharing stories. You digest information and then you mix it with your own experiences, and then you want to make something new from that. And it gave birth to me trying to share stories using these mediums when it comes to animation or games. So that's how I found myself in this space and started doing stuff like this.
That is so powerful. And there's always that thing between the arts world and the science world where it just seems like they never meet. But there's all that we find that in animation and games, there's that line that arts meets science, and it's so spectacular. And many of the things that you've said, I can resonate with personally as well, where you have a scientific side and you also have an artistic side, and you want to tell stories that explore those passions, those various passions of your being. So this is really great. Now, you've also done a lot more in terms of training and teaching people and bringing people into the industry. Where is that passion from? What is it that drives you to teach and to explore? Now, I'm gonna tell a side story here where when we started Stay Dry, we really wanted to document our process. We were intentional about, making sure that even the mistakes we were making documents for those and writing down the things that went wrong, what's going well. And many of the people, even it was quite a struggle, but for you, it was nothing. It was almost like before we said, can we document this? There's already like, some pages or a video as well of this, right? So what is it about that passion that, what drove you into that passion and how did you discover this?
So the funny thing is, anybody that knew me growing up would be shocked that I actually like to teach or talk a lot because I was someone who would just be in my own world, in my books, in my comics, and in my cartoons. I would hardly say a word, but I was constantly absorbing, and there was so much information I was absorbing. I didn't have time to talk to people. There was so much to learn. But I think I earlier, from now looking back, I realized that like I had this issue with my mom where I would take like weeks to learn something, how to make something like something really hard, I would conquer it, discover it, and I would just readily give out the information to all my friends. Like I'll just call them and say, "Look at how I did this." Just my mom would be like, "What are you doing? Don't you know this is your edge? You should just save it." I'm like, "But let me just tell them. I want to tell somebody that So I had this. I've always had this thing where I wanted to kind of like share knowledge. And another thing, apart from it being something I like to do, was I think I was very influenced by the community growing up when it comes to the comic days. It's not like now where you could just send files to yourself up and down WhatsApp. You had to walk to your friend's house with your actual comic and exchange with their own. So we had like a small community where we would exchange comics. I have a Spider-Man, you have a Batman. Can we exchange for 1 week and I'll come back and get yours? So that ability to share and give information and then just constantly share because we didn't have enough and everybody didn't have everything at once, kind of bond this into me where I'm readily, once I'm able to solve or conquer something, I feel like the community needs to have this so I can get something else. We like trading information to get other information because, sharing will just get somebody else will commit theirs to you, right? So I think that's also, I would say, I don't think I was born with it. I think I feel like I was kind of like influenced by that growing up where we had to actually physically move from location to location to get new information and kind of exchange what we had to get that information. And it was comics back then or cartoons and sit down and talk about stories. And like we will have like why do you think Spider-Man is stronger than this character? And then I will bring my theory all the way from my house, and then you bring your theory like in mile two, and then we'll argue it out there. And then to someone's like, okay, I think I get what you're saying now. So constantly trading that information, all those times kind of became born into me. And then not to talk of like where how we learned animation and graphics was like in cafes, communities where somebody would tell you this plugin, that plugin, this is what I did to get this. I can let you know where to download this. I have this. Let me give you this for this. It just became that kind of thing where we did just share information. So slowly started building this ability for me to constantly share. And then I found out that some people will actually pay for me to share information, and it just became what I did naturally. So
Wow.
yeah,
I want
yeah.
to pick on something you said that I think is really, really powerful. And that is where, as a community, you said you didn't have enough, but by each person bringing what they had together, you were in a word, much richer as a community. And last week's session, we talked about knowledge sharing. We talked about silos in the industry. We talked about people knowing things and not really wanting to share, keeping that competitive edge, in a way. And what the question I have for you now is from where you are, from where you stand, from where your perception about knowledge sharing and how this can shape and make enrich a community. What is that still happening? Is that still happening in the animation industry or in the games industry within Africa, or is it happening as much, or is it happening less? What are your thoughts on this?
So I feel like I didn't actually. I was shocked when I started meeting this. I grew up and I met these silos where people stop sharing information, people hoard information. It was really like a very shocking thing. And from the one, it was I was so shocked about it that I rejected it heavily. You would find me on Facebook fighting back in the day. That was Facebook was the only place we had a community. You see people hoard plugins, site becoming this thing where they hoarded these things they were available for free. And you go online and somebody gave it out for free, but someone that had it won't share it. So it became something I really stood against. And I only found out I don't think it's only in Nigeria, actually. I think Africa, because I was in Ghana for a while and I noticed not as much as it is in Nigeria, but some of it happened there. And I feel like when people don't know enough, they are afraid to give out the little they feel they have so that they don't lose out. And then secondly, I feel like some people are afraid to be wrong. Like they're afraid to say, this is what I think this thing is about this information. I can tell this is how you go about rigging. They're afraid to be wrong about it because they feel like only foreigners or white people or these top names in this industry should say concretely, this is the formula or this is the workflow. A lot of them were not confident in saying it exactly. They're afraid if I say it now and it's wrong, I will be stupid in the community, right? Because I've seen a lot of top artists I know in Lagos, Nigeria, say that they actually they were just afraid to speak up. Even till now, some of them don't just speak up because they're really afraid to say the wrong thing and get like clowned about it if they don't get it right. And but I realized that like the big names in the industry are not scared. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I will be corrected, right? That's abroad, foreign, globally. They are not scared to be wrong. They will make their mistakes, take their best foot forward, make a mistake, and if they're wrong, they'll come out and say I was wrong, right? But I feel like in Nigeria here, there's this thing where you feel like you have to be perfect. You don't want to be wrong because it kind of takes away from you uh, your your bigness, in the stage or your growing. You don't want that stain on you, and I think that's what held a lot of people back from actually sharing knowledge. When I found out that, I really now started coming down on the industry because I was very angry about it. But when I found a lot of people confiding in me and saying, I actually was not confident. I didn't think I knew enough to say or to give out instructions in public. And this were top new people I looked up to. I was like, wow, I never thought about it like this. So it kind of made me understand that there are different angles why people don't share information, but a lot of them actually are just scared of losing their competitive advantage by making everybody know. And you can see it now, even with the AI out there, everybody shouting, now everybody can make art. So what is it? That's why they're angry. So it has always been there. That was one of the things I noticed about not sharing information. But
Mm.
um, now I feel like people are beginning to see the value in sharing information because YouTube is out there. Somebody will find it if you don't say it. The only thing I feel like there's still that element of people being scared of saying I'm the one that said this thing that is not popular yet. And I don't want to be wrong. I don't want to. The popular way is just the only way. I don't want to go on it. So that's the only thing I noticed is
Mm.
still happen. Yeah.
Yes, yes. If I'm hearing correctly, there are two main reasons here, where one of them is the fear of losing that competitive advantage, which with the proliferation of information with AI, that advantage is not really there anymore. You can pretty much learn anything and achieve anything with all these technologies. And but the second bit is that fear of making a mistake, of being wrong, which is quite a big one. The fear of looking bad, or the fear of failure in that sense.
Exactly.
Those are the two big things. And in this sort of scenarios, where would you say someone can start if you are facing that sort of challenge, if you wanted to be able to share your knowledge, but you were afraid of failing
I
or
feel like
looking bad?
okay, I feel like the best place to start is start sharing your mistakes. Share the errors you made when you started. Like as a learner, you probably will make a lot of mistakes. So being able to come out and say, look, I'm struggling with this. I have tried this, and it doesn't work. Can anybody give me a better option? I think when you get used to like showing that your weakness, that this is hard for me to learn. Can anybody help me out? I think when you get used to being able to put yourself out there and getting feedback, positive feedback that helps you learn, I think it teaches you to now give back, knowing that, okay, so it's not a bad thing for someone to say they don't know. And when I somebody that doesn't know, I should be able to give back to because somebody gave me when I didn't know. I feel like you start from there as a beginner who's trying to share information. Start with your flaws, start with what you don't know about the field, get people to correct you about it, and then build that confidence, that muscle of being open about information or what you don't know. And it will help you when you know enough to now start sharing.
Mm.
And I also say also please one more thing I learned very early when I started sharing information was don't deal in absolutes. Don't cement your answer as the only option. You get like this is my opinion. This is how I will go about it. Is a good way just in case someone has a better. I always say like this is how I would do it. But if someone has a better opinion or a better way, I don't mind to hear about that. That way you're able to put out what you know. And when someone has a better one, they can say, oh, even though this guy said this one and I found a better one, nobody's holding you to that standard of saying this was the only way. And then I took it to know. So yeah, I also learned that early that you need to let people know that there's room for improvements, even though this is my solution. I'm sure maybe somebody knows better. I don't mind even learning from that person, even I'm volunteering what I know right now. It kind of helps you to
Right. In other words, be humble.
be
And
humble.
of course,
Very
if
humble.
yes,
Yeah.
share your mistakes and let people know that, it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to fail as long as you don't stay there. You rise up and continue. And yes, be humble about what you share. It's always good to give information, but also be willing to learn. That's such beautiful advice. Now, let us know in the comments if you're following this and if you have any other thoughts. We're online. We're gonna be interacting with you live. So let us know in the comments what your thoughts are on this. So, Uchenna, let's switch up. Let's switch up a bit. All right. Let's talk a little bit about AI, the conversation that everyone loves and everyone hates at the same time. What is all this kerfuffle about? What's all this thing about AI taking jobs? What is your opinion first off about, especially in the animation industry?
Okay. So I come from a very rough industry. Like all of us know, as Russia and the point globally, animation is very tough and rough. Art, a lot of people think that if I don't do school, like I'm just going to do art. Art is very difficult. And I know why it's very expensive to study art abroad. Even though most of us didn't go to art school here, we learned these tools, and because we learned it, people feel like if these guys that didn't go to school or these guys that don't are not in university, are doing art, maybe it's easy, because a lot of people in Nigeria are doing art, had to sacrifice degrees, had to sacrifice good results because it's tedious and you're learning it with school. Or some of them completely sacrifice school and didn't go to school, just did learn this stuff and that's all they are doing right now. Maybe some are going back to school now. So um early on in the community when we started learning Photoshop and everything else, we would you would you would be using a new tool like just came out at the time, and before you know, there's an update, right? Or they'll scrap that tool and it's just gone. And here you just started trying to learn, and then you found out that like maybe your computer 15 gig RAM was enough, 4 gig RAM was supposed to be enough. Next thing you find you need 16 gig RAM. Softwares were not available. We didn't have internet like that to just get software. You had to go to computer village. So things were changing so fast. There was no time to stop and start throwing stones at any glass houses. Like there was no time to complain. You just had to adapt quickly. Like animation Nigeria was the one with the roughest things. Really, everybody in that space I thought, would grow rigor because of that kind of that was silent during the 90s. early 2000s. I felt like anybody that came from that time would be used to this change and you changing with that change, right? So when AI came, and as if that wasn't enough, we went through the Millennium Bug. That one too. They came out of noise. War was going to end. People sold their houses. People stocked their fridge. War did not end, you know. And the people that did not hide their heads in the sand and tried to keep going were ahead. By the time people came back to start catching up with what they left behind, those people had gone ahead. Same thing when the internet came. I'm lucky enough to have been born before the internet. And then I grew up and met in the internet, right? So, and when it came, we would go to cafes just to go and chat. And that same other people making meaningful connections, and those people they're way ahead of us right now, right? While we were just busy downloading music or made them put away. What I'm just trying to say is that like there's so many changes in the community that I have grown up with and adjusted to, even back up to COVID-19, that I have realized that like when something new and big comes like this, just try your best to find your space in that new change, adapt as quickly as you can so you don't get left behind. Because even in COVID-19, while we were waiting for the world to open up, people were busy making digital branded personalities and presence online that even right now we cannot catch up to those people ever again. They've gone far, right? The people that harnessed COVID-19 and jumped into the digital space that time have never that they've not been, nobody has caught up to them till now. So when when this AI came, it felt like just COVID-19 all over again. I felt like this was the chance. I didn't want to miss it. So 2 years ago, I quickly said adjusting, learning it as quickly as I could because I just knew it wasn't going to go away. What I'm just saying is that like I don't know about the Gen Zs, but I knew about where I'm coming from. You have to adapt. Adapted so many times. I'm only used to adapting when there's a new adversity. I don't know how to hide my head in the sand. This is what I love to do. I have to find a way to do it, regardless of what happens, whatever new thing they bring to that space. I just have to find a way to keep doing it because nobody asked me. I wanted to do it. And now, so when I find a new obstacle, I have to find a way to cross the obstacle. Even if I will go through the obstacle or I'll go around the obstacle, it's up to me how I find my way around. So I didn't expect a lot of artists to be crying about AI. Even when I had all the negatives about it, I knew what are we going to do? Right? There's nothing we could do about that. So I learned it too, just in case it was not going to go away. I would have the advantage. And even if it goes away, I'm still an artist. I've learned the old tools. I have the advantage either ways. I'm not going to lose out. So that was my approach towards AI. That's my foundation of approach towards AI. Generally, that's why people don't understand why I feel like I'm always like I don't get angry about the issue. I support AI because I have to adapt. I adapted early,
Mhm.
very early to AI. So yeah,
Hmm.
that's just my
Yeah. Yeah, that is so that, and we talked about we're coming from a place where people hoard knowledge to maintain that competitive advantage, or people would usually do that to maintain competitive advantage. And now you're talking about how to actually maintain competitive advantage is to adapt. Like things keep changing, tools change, technology changes. It's when we were working on Stay Dry, we were going to use real-time, you know, processes, and we weren't going to do any storyboarding. We're just going to go for it without a storyboard. That was a change, and now there's another change on the horizon that just throws everything else away, and you still have to adapt. So that is the mindset of staying ahead, of just adopting the new technologies, adopting the new things, finding out the best way to make what you want to do, achieve what you want to do, and taking that. And funny enough, when you started talking about the internet, it seemed like the bandwidth kind of dropped here. So the connection went unstable. So apologies to those online. I think Uchenna invokes the internet gods and something, something happened there. But we're back now. I mean, I hope that wasn't too much. But please let us know in the chat. This has been such an insightful conversation, and let us know what you love most about this conversation. And thank you for staying here with us. Now, so if we were to discuss a bit more about what you are doing, because you wear many hats. You've done a lot. You're really knowledgeable, and it shows because of the way you adapt to new technologies and the way you adapt to new trends. What is it that's on the horizon? What are you most passionate about right now, and what's next for Uchenna?
So, at the core, one of the things that really drove me early was game development. I like game because first of all, I like to the animation space was saturated. I didn't meet anybody that didn't know animation at the time when I started. Everybody knew what animation was. We don't have like proper production unit yet, I agree. But everybody understands the topic. They know what rigging is, modeling is. There was nothing new about it. And I realized that like early that the issue I had was not going to be knowledge, it was going to be hardware, the other bottlenecks, like what it takes to make a game, what it takes to make animation. There were bottlenecks there. And on my way of trying to look for new tech and new tools to understand how to make it tech, to skip all those hurdles, I found real-time game engines. And then real-time game engines kind of opened. So Unity at the time, I tried Unreal Engine, I tried Unity, Game Maker, name it, Game Salad. We tried all of them. We tried everything. So our fun fact I was introduced to game development by two twins. They were like they're tech guys now. They do like web development now. And at the time I didn't know you could make games. I was just doing every other thing like graphics, designs, and then this guy said you could make games in your house. It was my mind was blown away. Like you could actually make games. I go to play games in people's houses. I didn't know you could make game in your house. So they took me to their house on the Pentium 2 and they showed me their game on the computer. It was just this very tiny guy jumping and they showed me the code behind it. It was Game Maker at the time. Ever since then, I just shut down everything else. Like I immediately I saw that I stopped everything else I was doing and just dived 100% into game development. Because I already knew graphics. I it was this new thing and nobody was making games at the time. There was nobody making games. So ever since then, I've always wanted to make games. So I studied to learn. We tried to make a game. My company, me and my friend, we had a company called Aboki Shop. Our first game was Babalawo. We tried to make that game. We made that game like in, I think, 2 years, and it was the most horrible game ever made. It was buggy, slow. We didn't know a lot. We didn't know how to optimize, nothing, but it was a good experience. We were one of the people making games at the time. People who knew us. It was popular. We had like 5,000 downloads, mostly from Brazil. That's when I knew Brazil had like a culture, like Brazilians had of like, they were like, Yoruba culture was very close to what Brazilians had as a culture. So the game kind of related to them. And a lot of downloads were coming from Brazil at the time. So we just found it was just a new world for all of us. For us, it was a mobile game. We struggled through that and we got it done. So, but we realized it was hard. The bottlenecks were still there. I wasn't an artist then. I wasn't that good as I am right now. I couldn't make characters. You know the whole pipeline for game development. We didn't have that behind us. It was just my friend, just a programmer, just me, an artist, barely learning how to do stuff. So after a while, based on some behind the scenes struggles, we gave up. We stopped the company. It was hard. We gave up and then we stopped, right? But then I've always like kind of refined myself, make games behind the scene because that's my passion. That's the real thing that drives me. While I was learning animation and graphics, I kept on making games. I would delete them, make them, delete them. Just kept that hope alive of me making games, right? So games are the things I'm working on. I've had games ideas I'm working on, and now AI has come now. So a lot of things that were outside my scope to do, or they were too tedious that made it kind of crazy for a small company to do, are now easy. I would like they're before me to do now. Like for documentation, when it comes to GDD, game design documents, I can easily use ChatGPT to get that out. I can easily check the game for things like target markets, areas of expertise, what consoles. ChatGPT to analyze my story, analyze it quickly, and give me answers that helps me give me direction, structure me before I even start making assets. So that way now I can go into that venture, knowing I have my clear path to either making money or target console. All those information real companies had that made them companies, not just people making games in their houses, right? So now with AI, I can do that. Then they added the art side that has made it gone crazy. Now you can make a 2D art, make a 3D art. So in a nutshell, I'm saying that like now I can easily prototype my ideas, test it out in the market, and then use that to understand if people actually want that product without spending so much money where it's like I'm stuck, right? I can do that with an AI. I prototype my ideas quickly, I bring it out, and then I prove that product for myself or an investor. And then when I get funding, they can take it back to drawing board where we now get real artists, which I know a lot of, and then we can sit down and actually now do what real companies do, where we hire hands, sit down in a place and build a product. But if I don't, but being able to make MVPs now, which is all powered by AI right now, is exactly what has made me come back to game development. Because without that, I would not be talking about making games. It would be hard. If you ask 10 artists right now, what is your biggest issue in the industry? when it comes to animation or games. They'll tell you funding, support, hardware. AI kind of makes that, levels that whole playing field for you to do MVPs. And then use that MVPs now to go and pitch to an investor because you can't go to an investor with just a document, or you can't go to an investor with just stories. If you have an MVP, he can play, he can begin to visualize where you're going to and understand what you're talking about. So yeah, so I'm working on a game, serious game. Even I am impressed by the game I'm working on.
Can you believe that?
And because there's AI now, I can like offload a lot of things that were heavy for me to do to those platforms while I focus on exactly the core of the product itself I'm trying to build right now.
Wow. Are you working alone? Is it something, would you advise, what would you recommend for someone trying to do the same thing? Would you advise they work with someone, or is everything available for them to be able to do this alone?
So I would say if you want to work alone with AI, you have to have had the amount of experience I have. I've spent over 15 years in this industry and I'm a generalist, right? I actually can work in Blender on my own, rig, model, animate, texture, the whole 9 years, right? And so when someone like me is using AI, it makes it a breeze for me. But if you're just a beginner coming to the industry, I think it will be too daunting because AI thrives on the amount of experience and knowledge you have. So if you the amount of experience you have is what you can inject into the prompt or into the design and use that to now manipulate the platform to give you best or quick results. So if you don't have some of the experiences I've had, you might it'd be better for you to go with the team, right? But if you have had experiences, I would advise you to only focus on using AI for MVPs. I don't think you can use it for final product yet right now. It will be allowed to use for MVPs and then get it something out there and then that will now fetch you that money to go to your team and then begin to now build the way it was meant to be built traditionally with a team.
Wow. Guys, this is really powerful stuff right now. So, let us know in the chat what you're thinking, what your thoughts are. There's a difference between being an expert in something, and that makes all the tools much easier, much more accessible to you. If you're new, you still have to learn some of the fundamentals are always going to be the fundamentals. You still have to know some of these things. So while AI levels the playing field, there is still quite a knowledge gap that you need to cover. Um, okay, so if we were going to go from MVP now to product, this is like a master class right here, right? And we talked about some of this previously, and we also, when we are working on stage, right, we went through this whole process. We were a distributed team in different places, and we needed to work together. We needed to find a way to synchronize and get some of the tools like GitHub and different project planners. I think we used like two different project planners. We had like a Discord channel, those sort of things, those sort of that sort of infrastructure or structural sort of setup that you have for a company. How important is that if you wanted to go work with a team, go from MVP to to a product when you're trying to get a product out there? And is this something that is regularly practiced?
So, the pandemic introduced this whole virtual system working, Zoom and the whole whatnot, the Trellos. People didn't, but it's still like creative people still feel like these are office tools, like these are corporate tools, not our tools, right? And so you find a lot of creative people working in teams, especially when it's like a small team where a creative person is the head, and he has not worked in any corporate setting before. He's going to probably skip those tools, except he gets a project manager who insists on those tools, right? But if the thing I've learned is there's a reason why the corporate world excels with a vast team when they're using these tools. That structure is very important. Like, for example, one of the things I thought recently was working with StageRight, where we were forced to learn Discord and the rest,
Of
and
course.
watching people like
Strongly
and
encourage that. Okay, yeah, but
what's his name? Is it Toluwani?
Tio
I think it's
Luani,
Toluwani.
yes, Tio, yeah.
Like Tony, like had his pulse on everybody because he was managing setting tools up. And the point about these tools is that they help you self-manage too, because when you're going back to check all these things and checking off all what you've done and what you've not done, you kind of start picking up on, or at least you know where you are or what you should do. It helps you because a lot of creative people we are bombarded with information. There's so many things disturbing us visually. We are always trying to, do a lot of stuff. And having those structures that will guide you through the project kind of helps you deliver on time. So you underestimate it until you have to do that, and it helps you meet crunch time because if you leave a creative person, he will keep fine tuning something forever, and that thing will not be done. But with the milestones that are embedded in all these tools, you're able to hit a certain milestone, pass it on to the next person while you can keep on refining without holding the rest of the team back. Those are things that you can't learn on YouTube. You have to experience it to understand the value. That's why it's good to work with studios, work with a team, and then so you can take that when you're working. So if you plan to lead something tomorrow, like a small team in a studio tomorrow, I would advise you to work like in a proper studio, in a proper team, and see how that structure works so that you understand exactly why it will never be something you like to do, but it is something that will be necessary if you want that project to hit the deadlines it's meant to hit. And then for every team member to, you can't chase everybody down. For every team member to be able to self-manage themselves and have what they're supposed to do minimally done exactly when they're supposed to do it. You need these tools, you need these management tools. And it's something the creative industry hardly, I don't think they teach us or we don't learn it. We're too busy learning polygons and graphics and animation. We forget that when you have this knowledge, delivery now becomes the thing you have to now master. And those tools help you kind of manage. So I won't like to use very, very critical. I know that now. I know that now. I learned it very old, very late in my life, but it's a very critical, especially when you're doing something that you need to ship. You will need to have these tools to manage you through, except you're not planning to ship at a particular time or date. So yeah, that was my answer for those kind of
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's the learning the creative side, but also learning how to deliver in all the different ways of it, like just from collaboration to even things like marketing. So you're using some of these tools now, how have you discovered new tools that if you wanted to do, get a team on board, what tools would you use? This is, give us some of the cheat codes. Well, if someone is out there trying to assemble a team and put stuff together, what tools should they use for that sort of collaborative or delivery effort?
Hmm. So for me right now, because I'm focused more on workflows that are specific to the economics of where Nigeria, right? We know how it is, so I'm focused more on making sure we're able to deliver whatever was taking time before. I'm trying to half that time by half. So right now, I'm not, there's no management. The only tool I have is my wife. My wife is the tool. So we have like a board in the house. She's a project manager and she reminds me. So I given her, because I know what my flaws are and I gave her the rules to manage me. So I said, okay, these are the things, these are my flaws, these are the things I know I will do that will delay me, please. If you see me doing them, please. And she's always asking me, where are you now? What is remaining? What are you doing now? So we can check it off the board. So I won't lie to you, my wife is the only tool I have right now that is managing me. I don't have any digital tools right now because, and if I start the company tomorrow, she'll be the one setting up all those tools because she's someone who's familiar with those stuff like that. And no matter how much I can keep saying I understand the importance of those tools, it's not my first nature to always go and install them when I have an idea. So I'm still struggling with that. But I have learned that they're so important that when somebody sets them up for me, I have to follow them. So the best thing is to get someone who is going to set up those tools for you, who understands your flaw, your limitations, and set those tools between your limitations and help you manage yourself through whatever you're trying to deliver, right? If you don't have that kind of person, then you have to learn those tools.
Yeah, that's so perfect. I mean, well, yeah, it's so perfect. You've got your own personal TU in that sense, TU Luani. And when we talk about make building stuff and putting stuff together, you found someone who can cover those sort of weaknesses or and bring their own strengths into what you're trying to do to make sure you deliver. And it's so vital that even if it's just accountability, even if it's just checking up and saying, where are you? It is really vital. So that's just, really perfect. Right. We are almost at the end of this talk. So, guys, if you are online, let us know, give us a shout, put some questions in the comments, and we'll try to get to them. All right. So, what is the last thing I wanted? There's something I wanted to ask you that I'm trying to remember now. Um, yes. So, about, your teaching experience and about the students that you've had. And I imagine you've taught thousands of people over the years, over the past few years. How are you able to tell now if people came to you, which one would be, would follow through, would be a success, within a week of meeting them? Are you able to tell? Are there qualities that distinguish some students from the others, from the ones that you've seen become successful to the ones that kind of just fell along the way? What are those qualities, and are you able to actually tell which ones would be make a success of whatever they're learning?
Yeah. So there are two ways you can they're just two indicators so how I do it is that there are two indicators that help me know who I should waste my time on. I can teach people. I can just teach people everyone. If I don't really care, if I'm just teaching a whole room of 50 people, and I will just do my best. I will give you the information. I know a lot of people will find out that, especially when it comes to the art field, a lot of people come into the art space underestimating what it takes to be here. And then when they find out, they either run away or they give up, right? So I have known not to push people I understand that art is difficult and it's not my job to make it too difficult. It's my job to make it easy for whoever comes in. But that's being said, I look for two people in my class. They are the people that are naturally talented. They are just talented. Everything comes easy. The tools come easy. Whatever you're teaching in class comes easy to them. When I find such people, I don't let them go. I kind of let them know that what they have is not common. And no matter how talented they think they are, practicing is the only way to keep on to make this stay. Like you can be talented at playing soccer. If you don't play soccer every day, if you don't practice, the guy that practices the most will still be better than you, right? So people like Ronaldo is known for practicing over time. Like that's his edge, that's his superpower. He's just over practicing, right? So, and that's me too. I'm always every day, almost 24 hours every day, I'm in front of my computer doing something new or doing what I know already. So I don't think I would ever be worried that I would lose my skills. So that being said, so those like when you're talented like that, I try to get you to hone in and just focus and get things done. I try to push everything I have. I focus on you and I let you know how good you are. And secondly, there are people that like don't have anything to go back to. Some people don't have so some people don't. One of the things that made me was I realized early that I didn't like school. I realized that I didn't find class interesting. I knew that uh,
That's
when I was in the event.
that is very ironic for someone that likes to teach.
So that's the funny thing. So the funny thing, like I thought that art was getting in the way of me. School was getting in the way of me learning what I wanted to learn. So I didn't give school. It wasn't like I said I was dumb. I just felt like the more time I spent trying to go to the less time I had for art. So I wanted to spend so much time learning my art. I gave school less time. So we would go to school. When everybody was learning, I would be on the last floor struggling with Unity. Like I would just not be in class, right? And then I'll come to class and struggle through. So, and I realized that like I didn't want to be that if I knew I didn't like this, I didn't want to go back. I didn't want to come out of this university empty-handed. I knew I wasn't going to give it my 100%. I knew I was going to get something. I was finishing, but I would get not something too good. So I wanted to make up for it somehow. So I said, you know what? I'm going to hold on to this particular art and I make sure that if I know this is what I want to do, and I know that I'm going to make sure I'm one of the best people. I'm going to give the reason why. I'm going to show people the reason why I'm giving so much time. I don't want to do this after 4 years or 5 years of my life, and people will look at me and be like, I thought you were good at Photoshop. What happened to Photoshop? I wanted people to see the reason why. So I didn't give it a breathing space. I gave it everything I had because I had nothing else to go back to. There was nothing else I was interested in than to just to do art. And I knowing that that was the only thing I wanted to do, I didn't give myself room or I burnt all the bridges. There was no way to go off the island of art than to master arts before I moved. So I gave art everything, my playtime. I wouldn't go out, no parties, no nothing. I would just 100% be from my PC or in front of my friends or with my friend in the cafe. We're learning a new tutorial or two. So I gave it so much time. It was scary. And that's so when I find people that have nothing to go back to, I'm like, if you have nothing else to go back to, nothing works for you, you don't have anything you like, can you try this? Try art. And then we give you that art, and then if it's the only thing that's important to you, you probably find those people. Most of my best students are people that didn't have anything to go back to. Like three of my students that are really good right now. They don't want to go back to where they came from. They don't like where they came from. They don't like how people looked at them in the past. They failed at so many other things. And this art was just like the final bus stop. So they didn't want to fail at arts too. And they ended up becoming one of the best people I can recommend to anybody whenever people are asking for people to they want to work. And they even have jobs. They're working right now. They don't. I can't recommend it because they are working right now. So I found out people, those two groups of people are the two people that I'm able to identify. I know that they're going to go far whenever I send them in any art class I'm teaching or really enjoy Blender.
Right. So I mean that's such a big life principle right there. Because so if you want to succeed at anything, first, if it's natural, if it comes naturally to you, then it's easy for you to grow in that area. And the other is if you're just determined to succeed, if you're like, I have no other hope, and you make a commitment to say, this is what I'm going to do, and you focus, 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 you're going to get it done, you're going to succeed. That is such a beautiful thing. Uchenna, this has been a pleasure. Pleasure. I always enjoy our calls, and it's a pleasure to bring this live, to bring this to the world, to an audience. Is there a final thing? Is there anything that you want to leave with people? Is there something that you're really passionate about? Anything?
So I would say if you are in if you find yourself in the art space, adaptation is one of the biggest skills you need to perfect. Being able to adapt to new tools, new times, new price, new ways of working is the only thing that will keep you in this space. Or if you cannot adapt, you probably will be disappointed. So adaptation is one of going to be your best friend. If you're someone who's out to adapt very well to any time or season, you would always find yourself on top in wherever you find yourself, not just the art space, anywhere else. So that's my biggest advice I will give you. Adaptation, learn to adapt and find ways to excel wherever you want to do that you love to do.
Amazing. Adapt or die, as they say. Right. This has been a pleasure. Thank you for those who joined us online. Thank you for joining us, and leave your comments. And get in touch. Let us know what you're thinking. And we'll see you next week, same time on Inside Vertex Live. We've had Uchenna today, and it's been a pleasure. Let us know if we want him back. You want to ask him some more questions or anything. Just let us know, and we're listening to all your feedback. All right. Enjoy the rest of your evening, Uchenna, and I'll catch you, next time.
Thank
Bye,
you. See
guys.